also very closely connected with the images you come across in painting. And painting definitely played a very important role in Woolf's prose. There are two types of paintings that we come across, and one is the Impressionistic painting, and the second is the Post Impressionistic painting. I would mention only some important painters. One is Vincent van Gogh, the second is Gauguin, and the third is Cazin. And they used, they moved away from the conventional style of painting. They did outdoor painting. They used much of color, light, shades, etc. Okay, and very bold, bright colors were used by these painters in the Impressionistic painting. Now, in the post-Impressionistic painting, these people, when they changed their style, they became post-Impressionistic painters. So there, what do you find is there's much use of, subtle use of color, of course. There are light, shades, etc. But at the same time, there are breaks. There are less details, there is more color, and there are breaks. So that is the post-Impressionistic painting. We do find stream of consciousness technique in D.H. Lawrence, in Catherine Mansfield, in Dorothy Richardson, and in Marcel Proust. This technique in fiction uncovered multi-layered self. Self is not what you see. Self is also, or more important, is what is not seen. The self that is in the flow. There are several perspectives, not one point of view, there are several perspectives. There is representation, there are associations, there are dreams, there is fantasy, there is memory. So, like the three novelists I mentioned earlier, they gave more focus to the social issues. Here are the novelists I mentioned, D.H. Lawrence, Catherine Mansfield, or Dorothy Richardson, and Proust. They focused on, they did use the stream of consciousness technique, and we do come across certain features of stream of consciousness in their novel. The way they use dreams or fantasy or memory, and the flow. Actually, it is the uncovering of a multi-layered self. Self is not one, self is multi-layered, and so multiple points, and so multiple perspectives. Along with this flow that you find, the narration, long narrations and only some dialogues, there are monologues, and there are two types of monologues we come across in fiction. There's direct interior monologue. Now, what is this direct interior monologue? It is first-person narration. So there's no guide to tell you what happens into the mind of the character. There's no, it happens in the novel of Ulysses. It is first-person, in the novel Ulysses, it is the first-person narration. There are direct interior monologue. At the same time, when you say it's a monologue, it is not a dialogue. So it's very close to the soliloquy. It's solo, mono. There are indirect interior monologues because you want to see what happens in the mind of the character, in the consciousness of the character. So here, in indirect interior monologue, you have a narrator who tells you certain things, and then the narrator takes you into the mind of the character. And often you come across verbs like he thought. Now, the moment it is Mrs. Ramsay said or Mrs. Ramsay thought, it's the presence of narrator. And then when there is the stream, you are entering into the mind of the character. Now, it's a little bit complex, but let's try to understand what it is. So the central consciousness is that of the narrator. Central consciousness is that of the narrator. And through that, okay, through that consciousness, you are directed to, or you enter into the consciousness of the character. So the character does not reveal his or her ideas and feelings straight to you. The central consciousness is that of the narrator. So it is the indirect interior monologue. In Ulysses, there is direct interior monologue. In both the novels of Virginia Woolf, Mrs. Dalloway, and To the Lighthouse, there is indirect interior monologue. And let's see some illustration. So we understand, oh, this is called the interior monologue. And we can compare. We can have two illustration. The one I would like to refer to is As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner. I would read the illustration here. See, it is direct interior monologue. So let's see. And now, them others sitting there like buzzards, waiting, fanning themselves. Because I said, if you wouldn't keep on sawing and nailing at it until a man can't sleep even, and her hands laying on the quilt like two of them, roots dug up and tried to wash, and you could not get them clean. I can see the fan and Dewey Dell's arm. I said, so see, it's first person narration all through, I said. Now let's move on to the indirect interior monologue. Now the very opening lines of Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway, it combines stream of consciousness technique, which is third person narration. Third person narration, and then it shifts into the indirect interior monologue. I'll try to read this. Mrs. Dalloway said, I hope you sense the presence of the narrator here. Mrs. Dalloway said she would buy the flowers herself. For Lucy had her work cut out for her. The doors would be taken off their hinges. And then, thought Clarissa Dalloway, what a morning, fresh, as if issued to children on a beach. What a lark! What a plunge! For so it had always seemed to her. When, with a little squeak of the hinges, which she could hear now, she had burst open the French windows and plunged at Burton into the open air. So, in the indirect interior monologue, the narrator facilitates, guides that this is what is happening into the mind of the character. I refer to the letter of Virginia Woolf to Roger Fry, the painter. Writing to her friend Roger Fry, Woolf said that I meant nothing by the Lighthouse. Before planning her novel, she wrote The Lighthouse. One has to have a central line down in the middle of the book to draw the design together. A line, one might say, like that which Lily paints at the end to unify her picture, or even like that slender time passes joining two large sections. Planning the novel, writing the novel, and sharing her plans or structure with the painter. That shows the importance of painting in Woolf's work. There is one essay by Woolf on modern fiction. And she says, I read the opening of the essay. In making any survey, even the freest and loosest of modern fiction, it's difficult not to take it for granted that the modern practice of the art is somehow an improvement upon the old. Modern art, modern novels, on the old, with their simple tools and primitive materials. It might be said, Fielding did well and Jane Austen even better. But compare their opportunities with ours. So what Fielding did or Jane Austen did is not enough now. We live in different times. What Virginia Woolf wanted to say, we live in the 20th century and we have to sharpen our tools, because our art is to present the inner man, the inner side of man and woman. And for that, those tools will not do. We have to sharpen our tools and we have to make more efforts to know what happens into the mind of human beings. She says our quarrel is not with the classics. More and more focus is there between the details, and you should not give more importance to the details. Okay, I would read only a little part of this, that look within and life, it seems, is very far from being like this. Examine for a moment an ordinary mind on ordinary day. These two novels I was talking about, Mrs. Dalloway and To the Lighthouse, about ordinary minds on ordinary day. So more focus is to be paid to, as Bergson referred, is about the moment, about the then. Very briefly, I would like to conclude my talk, but I think I should also give some references. And if at all you have intention to study further, read further Woolf's work and understand her work, please read these critics. One is Showalter Allen, Introduction to Mrs. Dalloway, and there is a British Library essay as well. The second is Kate Flynn's essay on To the Lighthouse, then a Cambridge Companion to Virginia Woolf, then Virginia Woolf's essay, Modern Fiction. These are certain essential books that you should refer to, and nonetheless the English novel by Walter Allen. Until and unless we understand the importance and significance of psychology, of Bergson's duration, modern fiction, novel as an art form, the importance of symbols and images in novel, we will not be able to appreciate Woolf's art. Thank you.
SANDHAN, All Gujarat Integrated Classroom.
સેટેલાઇટના માધ્યમથી જોડતી કડી એટલે સંધાન.